Hi, friends. Good morning, and welcome to a conversation on doing business in Egypt. So, in continuing with our series of countries in Africa, so quickly moving on. So, Egypt, as we all know, is one of the oldest civilizations of the world, and let's try and start. So, the Old Kingdom, as we call it, which is the dynasties from 6 to 8, reigned in from 2575 to 2150 BC. So the fourth dynasty begins, and the Great Pyramids of Giza and Sphinx are built fabulous places. It's often called the Age of Pyramids, and the fourth dynasty is a time of peace and a time when the sun god Re became prominent in the Egyptian religion. The first intermediate period, which is from 2150 to 1975 BC, which had the ninth to 11th dynasties, where Egypt splits back into two countries. The Old Kingdom ends and the first intermediate period begins. Then we look at the Middle Kingdom. So the Pharaoh, which is again another 200 years, from 1975 to 1640 BC, dynasties 11 to 14. The Pharaoh Mentuhotep to reunite the two parts of Egypt under one rule, signaling the start of the Middle Kingdom. The royal tombs are moved to the north near the city of Memphis. The Egyptians start to use irrigation to carry water from Nile to their crops. That's a civilizational development. The second interim period, which spans till 1520, dynasties 15 and 17, where this marks the end of the Middle Kingdom and the beginning of second intermediate period. Some of the dynasties at the end of the Middle Kingdom and during this period only last for a short time. So the horse and chariot are introduced for the first time. Now moving to the New Kingdom, which is another close to 470 years, from 1520 to 1075 BC. So dynasty 17 to 20. So we've had a reasonable case for stability. Amhos, who reunites the kingdom, and the new kingdom begins. Tutmosis I becomes a pharaoh, and he is the first to be buried in the Valley of Kings. And for the next 500 years, this will be the royal burial area. Then 1479, Hatshepsut becomes a pharaoh, and she's one of the most successful women pharaohs who ruled for 22 years. And then 1386, Amenhotep III becomes the pharaoh, and under his regime, civilization would reach its peak in terms of prosperity, power, and art. And he built the Temple of Lakshar. 1352, Akhenaten changed the Egyptian religion to worship a single god. This was a major change of life. It only lasted for his rule. However, as his son Tutankhamen would change the religion back to the old ways. Then 1279, Ramesses II becomes a pharaoh, and he would rule for 67 years, and he built many monuments. And then finally, the third intermediate period, which is from 1075 to 653 BC, dynasties 21 to 24. The new kingdom comes to an end when Egypt becomes divided. The third intermediate period begins, and Egypt grows weaker and is eventually conquered by the Assyrian Empire near the end of this period. So this is as far as the history of Egypt, the civilizational history of Egypt is concerned. Now let's try and understand what does it take to do business in Egypt. So if we have to look at it, friends, I would, before moving on, thank Subhash, Graceland, and Jugal for their efforts to get the presentation done. Moving on, this is the overview for the day. Country level perspectives. What does it take to set up business, visas and permits, exchange control regulations, COVID-19 impact and reforms, and of course, uh, what it takes to do business. So Egypt, as we see, is on the cusp of the. I mean, it has the most influential Suez Canal. It's the connection, which is used as a connection between Asia and Europe, and very close to Arabia, and it's in the northern part of Africa. You can say like northern part leaning towards the east northeast side of Africa. and culturally very, very rich and deep in terms of various religions, and though it's by far an Islamic society, the place where you don't see distinction between Sunnis, Shias, and even a good amount of Jews live together. It's a very, very forward-looking people, and they don't call themselves Africans or Arabians. They say that we are Egyptians. So the population is about 100 million plus, third largest in Africa, 14th in the world. Real GDP of $360 billion, and per capita GDP is $3,500. So that's again twice as much as India. 43% of the population is urbanized. Approximately 95% of the population lives within 20 kilometers of Nile River and its delta. So it's again something which we always see from our ancestral ancestors, that civilizations have always thrived around good rivers, big rivers. Similarly, petroleum, nat gas, phosphates, and iron ore are the main wealth of the region. Currency is Egyptian pound, and 1 pound equals about 15, $1, 1 USD is about 15 and a half, 16 pounds. Annual inflation is about 6%, 5.9%. So fairly healthy numbers. Sectoral contribution, if you were to look at industry, is about 16, 17% to the GDP. Retail is 14%. Mining is 12. Agriculture is 11.6. Real estate is 10.6. Construction is 6.4. Ease of trading across borders 171. Ease of doing business 114. Again, for starting business it's 90. In terms of employment, services almost half. Tourism is a big business there. Um, Agriculture is a quarter, and industry is about a quarter. Alexandria is the second largest city and a major economic center. Nearly 40% of industries are based out of Alexandria, including some of the top multinationals. Cairo is the capital of Egypt, is the country's primary economic center, and the city has a large-scale industrialization on textiles and food processing. Suez, the modern Suez remains a naval and a trade center linked to Cairo by road and rail. Mainly a transit port, it has petroleum refineries, canal workshops, and artificial fertilizer plant. Port Said is again a city in the northeast of Egypt. At the northern end of Suez Canal, the city has several gas-fired electrical generating plants, as well as computer construction and publishing industries. So, from an illiteracy standpoint, it's consistently been going down, and only about a quarter of the population today is illiterate, and the unemployment rate is about 8%. Again, there's been good improvement in both these, but what is not that great in terms of numbers is the extent of income poverty rate, which has been growing up. So, with a per capita GDP increase, I mean, where it is clearly shows the income divide between the haves and have-nots is fairly significant, and close to 6.2% of the population is estimated to be in extreme poverty. So, and what does it take to set up business in Egypt? Something which we've seen with other jurisdictions. First, you have the General Authority for Investment and Free Zones, the Egyptian Tax Authority, the National Authority of Social Insurance, and the Central Bank of Egypt. So these are the four main regulators we need to worry. And in terms of types of business structure, a joint stock company is a public limited company, a limited liability company similar to a private limited company here, a single member company, which is a one-person company, partnerships, sole proprietors, branches of foreign entities, and rep office. I think by and large the constitutions are fairly similar to what we have in India, and it typically takes about a month, if we are to say, to get the company registered, and the statutory expenditure is roughly about, if we were to put it, roughly about $2,000 to $2,500. So, and in terms of conditions, you need minimum three shareholders and three directors for a joint stock company. I think what most of the foreign entities do there is limited liability companies, where you can have two partners and 50 up to 15 shareholders, and a minimum capital of 2 million Egyptian rupees, so Egyptian dollars, so which is roughly if we were to see roughly about 55 million Indian rupees for importing goods, and foreign ownership can be 100%, and there must be at least one resident director. So, and sole proprietary branch is something which is required. So, a local, I mean, a manager is appointed for administrative work, and a minimum capital requirement, a deposit of 500 Egyptian pounds is required. And you have what is called as a free zone entity. So there are free zones within the country which are similar to your special economic zones, as what we call in India. And these free zones typically act as concessional regimes for setting up business. So what are the exemptions? Primarily, they have exemption from customs duties and taxes. Import and exports are not subject to any of the customs procedures. There's a free transfer of capital invested and profits abroad. Project supplies from the local market are exempt from VAT. Free pricing of products to set up a business in the private free zone. First, you need to make an application. Then there's an inspection by the committee appointed for the purpose. Then an application is being sent to the CEO of GAFE, which is similar to your MCA here. And the application is submitted to the cabinet to approve the establishment of a private free zone. Cabinet's approval comes, then the application is sent for approval. And if you look at the tax profile, yes, personal income tax 10 to 22.5%, and you have a basic exemption of up to 8,000 Egyptian pounds. Corporate tax rate is 22.5% plus 5% branch remittance tax, no MAT or surtax, and has a reasonably good GTA with about 50 plus countries. Again, capital gains tax is 22.5%. For individuals, it goes with the slab rates. VAT is at 14%, and there are lower rates. Withholding tax, interest, fees for technical service, and royalties 20%, and dividends it's 5% if 25% stake is held for a period of at least 2 years. But again, all these are subject to the 50 plus DTAs what Egypt is entered into. Then you have these thin capitalization rules where a 4 is to 1 debt to equity ratio applies. And any interest on debt exceeding this will be disallowed, will be treated as an appropriation or a dividend. And of course, you have your return filings, which needs to be done on a month-on-month basis for VAT and annualized for income tax. So tax to GDP ratio is reasonably healthy. So compared to a country like India, where we hover between 10 to 11%, it's about 14% here, which is good. And as of now, it's only been 1.4%. The data for July to August 2020, obviously given COVID to where it is. But what's very interesting is 44% of the collection is on indirect taxes. Um Customs is about 7%, 37% is income tax. You have property taxes about 8%. So by and large, the mix is healthy and diverse for a population of this sort. But what is concerning in the jurisdiction is the income inequality. So general investment and tax incentives. So first you have the business owners, the entrepreneurs get an investor's residency for a period of 1 year minimum, and to be renewed for 5 years and not exceeding the project duration, obviously. And they are exempted from the AOA of companies established under the new law are exempt from stamp duty taxes and publishing fee for a period of 5 years. Foreign employees can be hired in Egypt up to 20% of the total workforce, and there's a fixed customs of 2% on imported equipment which are necessary for establishing the project, because basically they want people to buy things locally. 30 to 50% discount on the investment costs for a period not exceeding 7 years. Again, that's subject to where you are located. And prior year losses can be used to reduce taxable profit, and they can be carried for a period of 5 years. So, as against 8 years in India, we can do it for 5 years there. So, what are specific investment or tax incentives? So, for eligible projects, right, where the activity which is initiated as activity based on research in Egypt, has Egypt as one of its principal places of business, and the main source of funds is forex from abroad, and which exports 50% of its total productions, and it also transfers an advanced technology to Egypt. The project comes under the ambit of eligible project. For such projects, they permit opening special customs window for importation and exportation. The government bears all or part of the utilities cost for the project land. The government bears some of the employees' technical training costs, returning half of the land price with regard to industrial projects that has started its activity within 2 years from the date of receiving the land, providing free land for some strategic projects. So Egypt offers no specific tax incentives unless a company is a free zone entity. So they're very clear that apart from those entities which are there in these zones, there won't be any tax benefit per se. You would have to go with the regular code. Foreign employees in private and investment sector. So roughly about 15,000 employees are there in the country at this point. It's down from 20,000 10 years ago. But that's basically because one, the population is fairly well trained, and there are enough local talent available. So moving on to visas and permits. So that would give you a perspective on why the number of expats have also come down, because it's not as tight as it's made out to be. Work visa, once a foreign national gets a work permit, the visa such as a temporary or tourist visa will get converted to a work visa, and this option is renewable. Single entry 30-day tourist visa, and ordinary visa is valid for a period of 3 to 5 years, and a special visa for 10 years is also being made available. Of course, these are subject to security clearances. And the next important thing for anyone who's doing business is exchange control. So 100% FDI is allowed in almost all sectors, and profits and dividends can be freely repatriated back. Total FDI in Egypt by economic sector, if we were to look at the petroleum, we've had by far the largest. Services about 20, more than half. Uh, Services are about 22%, construction is 6%, manufacturing 13.5%, and undistributed sectors another 5.3. Agriculture has been very marginal, but the main countries where they invest, where investments come from, are UK, USA, UAE, Kuwait, Netherlands, France, Germany, Switzerland, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. More than 70% comes from these jurisdictions. And financial sector, in this, and we look at the services sector, which garners about 22.7. 12% of that is in the financial services sector. Real estate is 3%, communications and IT is 2%, tourism is 0.9, the other services is 4.7%. So it's a fairly healthy, diverse mix, not dominated by any one or two sectors. Uh, Balance of payments, yes. So the blue ones are the FDIs, and the net FDIs and FPI investments. If you were to look at this point in time, the both have shrunk, or the compared to where it was in around 2016-17. What's interesting is the FPI inflows. So the FPI inflows have significantly come down into Egypt from about $15 billion in 2016-17 to $273 million. So that's a bit concerning at this point in time, and which clearly shows the vibrancy of the markets have not been very significant. Actually, in 2018-19, it was negative. They have pulled out more than $5 billion from the market, and overseas direct investments have also picked up. So that's again a case for foreign exchange leaving the country. So on the whole, as far as movement of funds out of the jurisdiction is concerned, off late it's not been a great story for Egypt. COVID-19 impact, if we were to look at, there's been a decline from 5.6 in fiscal year 2019 to 3.5 in fiscal. So the contraction has been the contraction real GDP growth to 2%, and 2.8% is projected for the entire year. The purchase man, the PMI index has declined to 38.3%. Unemployment has gone up to 9.6%. And post COVID, the government debt is projected to increase from 90 to 93.8% of GDP, which is, I don't think India is too far behind. The government's put in a fiscal responsibility package of 1.7% of the GDP. It reduced the policy rates by almost 3% to 9.25%, and there have also been measures to increase the time frame for finishing tax returns and stuff like that. So the strategic location with Suez Canal, which is the main transport route between Asia and Europe, makes it a hub for international trade between the region. Labor pool is by far the largest and extremely well trained and highly educated and competitive force. Tax rate of 22% for corporates and multiple DTAs makes it a very favorable environment. However, the fact that 32% of the population lives in poverty is a concern, and few other things like the political situation remains tense because after the ouster of Hosni Mubarak, yes, there has been some levels of concern there in the region, and a fragile banking sector, cumbersome customs procedure, and the ease of doing business not as expected. Yes, there are challenges in these regions. So these were some of the thoughts, friends, as far as Egypt is concerned. Catch up soon on the jurisdiction of relevance. Thank you.